Hello, I'm Ollie. This is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, none of the above. Today I'm doing a tag video, and it is the Astounding Science Fiction tag. So this tag was created by Michael K. Vaughan, and I was tagged to do it by Not Just Book Reviews. So you probably know Michael K. Vaughan if you know me. You may not know Not Just Book Reviews because he doesn't have as many subscribers as Michael, but I'd thoroughly recommend checking out his channel. If you like the kind of stuff I read, I think you'll love his channel. He's really, really good. Always has really insightful things to say about the books he's reviewing. So thank you, Michael, for creating the tag, and Not Just Book Reviews for tagging me, because it gives me a chance to talk about science fiction, which isn't something I talk about that much on my channel. I did do a review of The Book of Sound by Theo Clare recently, but sci-fi was probably my first love as a reader, so it's great to be talking about it. So without further ado, let me get into the questions. Okay, so the first question is, what was the first science fiction book that you read? So it was a long time ago, so my memory is a bit sketchy and I can't remember exactly what was the first science fiction book I read. But I think it was either, and this is the same answer that Not Just Book Reviews gave, it's either the novelisation of Star Wars, which I definitely read when I was young, or a Doctor Who book, so Doctor Who and the Dinosaur Adventure, which was a book, not the Dinosaur Adventure, it's Doctor Who and the Dinosaur Invasion, which is a book I read many times as a child. I think I read the Star Wars novelisation a few times as well. Or it may have been, I remember reading a book called Galactic Warlord, so you know, if you're looking for an original work rather than a novelisation. So Galactic Warlord by an author called Douglas Hill, which is a book I got out of the library and remember really enjoying. It's like a children's sci-fi adventure story from written in the 70s. I just checked, and it was published in 79, which was when I was 6. So I think I probably read it not that long after that. And I think I'm going to have to try and dig out or try and manage to find a copy of it again. It looks like it was the first book in a series called The Last Legionary, which is a great title for a series. So yeah, I'm gonna see if I can check that book out and read it again if I can find a copy. And the first adult science fiction book I read, I think, was The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So my dad was a huge Hitchhiker's Guide fan, still is. He used to listen to the original radio show when it was on the radio, and he'd recorded it all off the radio, and we used to listen to it in the car when we were on journeys. So yeah, I kind of definitely grew up with the Hitchhiker's Guide series, and read the first book pretty much as soon as I was old enough to, I think, and thoroughly enjoyed it. If you've not read it, why have you not read it? It's brilliant. You should definitely read it. Right, next question. What was the last science fiction book that you read? So this, I think, again, is the same answer that Not Just Book Reviews gave. So the last science fiction book I read was Project Hail Mary, by Andy Weir, which I really enjoyed. So Andy Weir, obviously, most famously wrote The Martian, which is great fun. And this book suffers a little bit, I think, from being similar to The Martian, particularly in terms of its central character. So the central character in this book is basically the same guy that's in The Martian. It's not the same guy that's in The Martian, but he's exactly the same. So he's a kind of scientist, engineering type who's a bit sarcastic, basically, and quite funny. And it's written from his perspective, and it's a really entertaining and funny book. What I would say is it's got much more ambition than The Martian, so it's got a much broader scale, and it's like classic hard science fiction. It's really enjoyable, about this guy who wakes up on a spaceship alone with no memory of why he's there, and the book is about him gradually getting his memories back and figuring out why he's there, and then figuring out the mission that he needs to undertake. So yeah, really enjoyable science fiction book. Yeah, I really liked it. Okay, next question. If you love science fiction, what made you love science fiction? I read that question badly, didn't I? If you love science fiction, what made you love science fiction? So I think the answer to this is my dad. So, my dad, bless him, was a big, or still is, a big science fiction fan. Every time I go over to see them, I peruse his lovely collection of battered old science fiction novels that he's got, things like Foundation and things like that, copies he's got from the 60s. So yeah, he was always a big science fiction fan and would talk to me about science fiction books he read and enjoyed and things like that. And as I say, introduced me to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So yeah, I think it was him that first instilled the love of sci-fi in me. And also, as a kid growing up in the 70s, the world seemed like a pretty drab place, to be honest with you. As a big reader, science fiction was definitely an escape for me. Reading is escapism, and it was great to be able to pick up sci-fi books from the library and go to strange new worlds, as it were. So yeah, I think that those two things, but definitely especially my dad. Okay, next question. What is your favourite science fiction movie? So I've already told you the answer to this if you've seen my favourite things tag video. So my favourite science fiction movie is RoboCop, which I think is a fantastic movie. And obviously I'm talking about the original RoboCop here, not the terrible remake. I think it's a wonderful blend of action and satire and humanity. So I think the central character of Murphy and his journey of kind of rediscovery as he figures out who he is brilliantly handled in the film. And it's a fantastic action film as well. It's furiously gory, which is always good fun. But the satirical elements of the adverts and the news reports and things like that they chuck in as well, I think are all really clever. So yeah, I'm a big fan of RoboCop. I know it's not a classic science fiction film in terms of being hard sci-fi or anything like that, but it's definitely my favourite. Okay, next question. What is your favourite science fiction TV show? So I've already referred to this. It's Doctor Who. So growing up in the 70s and early 80s in the UK, as it has become to be again more recently, Doctor Who was a really big deal. Everyone watched Doctor Who. We all talked about it at school on a Monday. What had happened in the episode we'd watched at the weekend. It was a great fun show. Very low budget back in those days, but really inventive. Often quite scary. And if you're from the UK and of a certain age, you will know that Doctor Who had a reputation for being a scary programme that you watch from behind the sofa. And at times it definitely was. I remember one story in the Peter Davidson years, which I think was called Black Orchid, which scared the bejesus out of me to the extent that I'm tempted to try and find a copy of it so I can watch it again and see what effect it has on me. But I remember literally running screaming from the room at one point. So yeah, definitely Doctor Who, and wonderfully as a parent, as you probably know, Doctor Who was relaunched quite a few years ago now, about 15 years ago or so. And so my son has grown up watching Doctor Who as well, as I did in the 70s, and indeed as my dad did in kind of the 50s. So yeah, big fan of Doctor Who. It's very much a part of of British cultural life, I think, and definitely probably an inspiration for the love of sci-fi amongst many British people of my generation and other generations as well. Okay. I should say as well, you're always supposed to say who your doctor is. So my doctor, oh God, I've forgotten his name. The one with the scarf, Tom Baker. My doctor was definitely Tom Baker. He was the one that I grew up with and most enjoyed watching. My fondest memories of Doctor Who are Tom Baker ones. Okay, next question. What science fiction book do you feel should be read more often? So I'm going to go here with The Man Who Fell to Earth by Walter Tevis. So I'm a really big fan of Walter Tevis. I've only read 3 of his books so far, but I've really enjoyed all of them. So I think he's not that well known in that his name isn't a name that you hear mentioned, but he wrote some great books, and books that have been famously filmed. So he wrote The Queen's Gambit, which obviously was a very popular Netflix show recently. He wrote The Hustler, which was a big Paul Newman film back in the 50s or 60s, I can't remember which. And The Man Who Fell to Earth obviously was famously filmed in the 70s with David Bowie in the title role. And it's a really good book. It's quite different from the film. There are some similarities, but it's not quite as trippy as the film, shall we say. But it's really, really good. So about this alien who comes to Earth, who appears to be human, and who, you know, basically becomes part of American society. And it's, you know, a fascinating book about capitalism and things like that, and about how American society, you know, functioned in the second half of the 20th century. So yeah, a really good book, thoroughly recommended. If you've not read it, I would definitely recommend picking up a copy. And also, it's one of those science fiction books that I think people who don't like science fiction would enjoy. Okay, so next question, question 7. What is your favourite science fiction short story? So this is a short story I reckon not many people have read, and it's one of those stories that I've read it. I must have read it 10 years ago or something like that, and I've never forgotten it. It's absolutely brilliant. It's called Taking a Shit in the Future, and that's what it's about. It's about taking a shit in the future. So it's by a guy called Caspar Kelly, and it's from a short story collection called More Stories About Spaceships and Cancer. And Caspar Kelly, I'm not sure if he's written any other books, but he is most famous for creating a video which I think was originally broadcast on the TV station Adult Swim, and then went viral on YouTube again, you know, about 10 years ago, and it's how I first heard about him. That video is called Too Many Cooks, and if you haven't watched it, I'll put a link to it in the description for this. It's absolutely brilliant. It's completely wild. It's kind of, it is sci-fi, I would say, as well. So it's well worth watching, but it's just absolutely brilliant. And it's kind of, it's very similar in some ways to the TV show WandaVision. Watch it and you'll see what I mean. Just seriously watch it. It's only like 10 minutes long. It's brilliant. So Taking a Shit in the Future is, as I say, it's literally about that. So my what I love about science fiction, or the kind of science fiction I often love, is science fiction that takes a very simple idea and then just runs with it and writes a story about it. And that's what Taking a Shit in the Future does. So it is about, in the future, scientists develop a procedure that means you don't have to go to the bathroom anymore. Yeah? So you don't have to wee, you don't have to poo anymore. And initially it gets used on dogs so that people don't have to clean up after their dogs anymore. But eventually they manage to evolve it to the extent that they can use it on humans. And it is about the impact on society of people not having to go to the bathroom anymore, and how it means that people don't have like private time anymore. And, you know, at first how, you know, it becomes like a class thing. So, you know, the richer you are, the less likely you are to have to go to the bathroom. It's just a very clever, very funny, very smart story. Thoroughly recommend it. And the whole collection is good. It's definitely worth reading. Okay, final question. What is your favourite science fiction book? So my answer to this is an answer that's similar to my answer to what is my favourite science fiction film. So it is a book set in the near future that's quite violent and kind of satirical. And that is a book called Random Acts of Senseless Violence by Jack Womack. Now, I'll confess, I don't think I've read anything else by Jack Womack, and I should, because this book's great. So it's written from the perspective of a teenage girl in a near future America that's basically gradually falling apart. So there's huge divisions. I think it starts with like an assassination attempt on either the president or the vice president. And throughout the course of the book, American society basically just collapses, and you know, things become more and more anarchic and violent. And as I say, it's about this girl living through that, the impacts on her family, and you know, the city she lives in, and it, you know, gradually escalates and escalates. It's really, really good. Well worth reading. Again, one of those science fiction books that I think, you know, even people who don't like science fiction would probably enjoy. So yeah, I thoroughly recommend it. It's a book I heard about back in the 90s when I was at university, and didn't read at that time, and then remembered it years later. and picked up a copy and loved it so much that I bought my sister a copy as well for her birthday. So yeah, that will be my recommendation for my favourite science fiction book. So that's me done. I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to put this video up, so I'm not going to tag anybody, but if you're watching and you haven't done this tag and you like sci-fi, go ahead and do it. I'm very interested to see everyone else's answers to this. Yeah, so that's the tag. As always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you've read any of the books I talked about, or you've got opinions on Robocop or Doctor Who, do shout. I'd love to hear them in the comments. And I'll speak to you again soon. Cheerio.